World War I is one of the most devastating events in human history, but it didn't begin overnight. It was the result of years of growing tensions, powerful alliances, military competition, and rising nationalism. When I started learning about this war, I realized it wasn't just about soldiers fighting on battlefields, it was about millions of ordinary people whose lives were changed forever. Today, I want to take you on the incredible story of World War I, a conflict that reshaped the world forever. At the beginning of the 20th century, Europe looked peaceful on the surface, but underneath, it was like a ticking time bomb. The world's strongest nations were competing for land, colonies, wealth, and military power. Britain ruled the largest empire on Earth, Germany had become an industrial giant, France wanted to recover territory it had lost decades earlier, and Russia hoped to expand its influence in Eastern Europe. At the same time, countries formed powerful military alliances. Germany joined forces with Austria-Hungary and Italy in what became known as the Triple Alliance. On the other side, Britain, France, and Russia formed the Triple Entente. These alliances were meant to protect each other, but instead they ensured that if one nation went to war, many others would be pulled in as well. The spark that ignited the war came on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo, Bosnia. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie were visiting the city when a young Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip assassinated them. What seemed like a single tragic event quickly turned into a global crisis. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia for the attack and declared war. Russia stepped in to support Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia and France. Britain entered the conflict after Germany invaded neutral Belgium. Within just a few weeks, Europe was engulfed in one of the largest wars the world had ever seen. Many people believed the war would end by Christmas. Instead, it became a nightmare that lasted more than 4 years. Millions of soldiers marched to the front lines with hope and patriotism, but they soon discovered a brutal new kind of warfare. Both sides dug deep trenches stretching hundreds of miles across France and Belgium. These muddy trenches became home to soldiers for weeks and sometimes months. They endured freezing winters, constant rain, rats, disease, hunger, and endless artillery bombardments. Between the opposing trenches lay no man's land, a deadly stretch of ground where countless soldiers lost their lives trying to advance. Technology made World War I more destructive than any previous conflict. Machine guns could fire hundreds of rounds every minute, making traditional charges almost suicidal. Heavy artillery destroyed entire villages. Poison gases like chlorine and mustard gas caused horrific injuries and painful deaths, forcing soldiers to wear gas masks. Airplanes were used for reconnaissance and later for combat, while submarines, especially German U-boats, threatened ships across the Atlantic Ocean. Near the end of the war, tanks appeared on the battlefield, helping armies break through enemy defenses for the first time. Some of the bloodiest battles in history took place during World War I. The Battle of Verdun in 1916 became a symbol of French determination. It lasted for nearly 10 months, with both sides suffering around 700,000 casualties. The Battle of the Somme, fought during the same year, became infamous for its staggering loss of life. On the very first day, the British Army suffered nearly 60,000 casualties, making it one of the darkest days in British military history. Despite months of fighting, neither battle produced a decisive victory, proving just how costly trench warfare had become. While soldiers fought on the front lines, civilians also paid a terrible price. Families lost fathers, brothers, sons, and husbands. Women stepped into factories, farms, and offices to replace the men serving in the military. Their contributions transformed society and accelerated movements for women's rights in many countries. Entire economies shifted toward producing weapons, ammunition, and supplies. Food shortages became common, and many civilians struggled simply to survive. The United States initially stayed neutral under President Woodrow Wilson. Many Americans believed the war was a European problem and wanted no part in it. However, Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare changed everything. German U-boats sank ships carrying civilians and supplies, including the British passenger liner Lusitania in 1915, killing nearly 1,200 people, including 128 Americans. Although America did not immediately declare war, public opinion gradually shifted. In 1917, Germany also sent the Zimmermann telegram, secretly encouraging Mexico to attack the United States in exchange for lost territories. When the message was intercepted and published, Americans were outraged. On April 6, 1917, the United States officially entered World War I on the side of the Allies. The arrival of fresh American troops, equipment, and resources gave the exhausted Allied forces renewed hope. By 1918, Germany launched one final massive offensive, hoping to win before American forces fully arrived. At first, they made significant gains, but they were eventually stopped. The Allies then launched a powerful counteroffensive known as the 100 Days Offensive. Germany's army was exhausted, its economy was collapsing, and its people faced hunger and unrest. One by one, Germany's allies surrendered. Finally, on November 11, 1918, an armistice was signed at exactly 11 a.m., ending the fighting. Across Europe, church bells rang, crowds celebrated, and millions rejoiced that the nightmare had finally ended. The cost of World War I was almost unimaginable. More than 70 million military personnel had been mobilized. Around 10 million soldiers were killed, over 20 million were wounded, and millions of civilians also lost their lives due to fighting, famine, and disease. The war destroyed towns, villages, and entire communities. It also contributed to the deadly influenza pandemic of 1918, which spread rapidly across the globe. After the war, world leaders gathered in Paris to negotiate peace. In 1919, the Treaty of Versailles officially ended the conflict with Germany. The treaty forced Germany to accept responsibility for the war, pay massive reparations, reduce its military, and surrender territory. While many believed these harsh terms would prevent another war, they instead created anger and economic hardship inside Germany. Historians widely agree that these conditions helped pave the way for the rise of Adolf Hitler and eventually World War II just 2 decades later. World War I also changed the political map of the world. The German Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Ottoman Empire, and Russian Empire all collapsed. New nations such as Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Finland, and others emerged. The League of Nations was created with the hope of preventing future wars, although it ultimately failed to stop another global conflict. Whenever I think about World War I don't just see dates and battles. I think about millions of young men who left home believing they would return within months but never came back. I think about families waiting for letters that never arrived, cities reduced to rubble, and an entire generation forever marked by loss. This war transformed politics, technology, society, and international relations in ways that still affect our world today. World War I serves as a powerful reminder that hatred, unchecked ambition, and failed diplomacy can lead humanity into unimaginable tragedy. Remembering its lessons isn't just about honoring history, it's about protecting our future from repeating the same mistakes.